Good day, Tom Ginn. Own your own health. We will be right back. Tom Ginn here. Today is a very special day. I've got a really phenomenal guest that I'll be bringing in. But before I make that introduction, I just would like to share a little bit about why we do this program. There's in our culture and in our society that people aren't doing well in the area of health. And this whole platform is about bringing in people that can bring a different level of new awareness about any health conditions, things that might be holistic in approach. And just through awareness is sort of our mission, is to help people recognize that there are alternatives to what we many times have been conditioned to think about of handling our health issues, whether we hurt ourselves or nutrition and all those things that we've been, in many cases, been not properly educated or informed that there are alternatives. So we bring in people that have scientific background, research, professionals, and from a place of holistic approach to health. And health covers a wide range of things. But today, the guest I'm bringing in, I always like to share how we met, is I met through a colleague that is a public relations person, Andrew Pass, and she said this would be a great forum for our guest today to participate in. And without any further ado, I'm going to bring in our guest. I'm really excited. And are you ready to come in, Keri? There you are. Welcome to Own Your Own Health.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. I always like to start out our conversation today, a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your background. And I really like the concept of what is your story? What is your why of why you're doing with what you're doing? So why don't we just start with that, Keri, and just start from where you're from and where we are today.
Sure.
And then we'll get into the topic.
Okay, great. So I am in New Jersey, and that is where my private practice is based as well. I am a holistic psychotherapist, and I have been doing this for around 20 years. I was very lucky. I knew when I was in high school that I wanted to be a therapist and that I wanted to work with the teen population, especially because I felt like in high school, so many people were struggling and they didn't have anyone to talk to. A lot of people suffer kind of silently because they don't think that there's a resource for them. So I always knew that I wanted to be that person that kids talk to. So I went, into college, into graduate school, and jumped right into the field. I've always worked just with, really teens and, college kids as well. And my practice is very unique in the sense that I'm a holistic psychotherapist. So what that means is that instead of just looking at the symptoms, I really take a much broader look because, everything we do from sleep, from dehydration to food, it all impacts our mental health. So I cannot treat somebody fully unless I am also finding out what they're doing, what their habits are on a daily basis. And in my book, I talk about the research that's involved and how dehydration, impacts your mood, how food impacts your gut, and your gut makes the chemicals for your brain, how sleep impacts your mood as well. And although when we hear it, we go, yeah, that makes sense. It's not something that we always connect with mental health. So that's my why as to why I'm here. And I really want people to be empowered to make daily changes to their lives to feel better.
Okay. Well, you've published a book, and I'm going to bring that up here, and just for a quick, so people see what the book looks like. And let's talk a little bit about the book. And I have some really specific questions that we can talk about. But what's in this book? What would somebody that's out there looking, they've got children or young people, because we're going to talk about that specifically. But what's in this book that parents should be aware of, and why they should have something like this in their arsenal of raising their kids?
Right. There's a lot of parenting books out there, and this one is a little bit unique because it really goes into very basic steps that the parents can be implementing on a daily basis. One of them is about, sleep and what kids need in terms of sleep and how to get the best sleep for your children. And these are areas that the parents need to look at. That way they could really build a foundation for their children. One of them is also about not being responsible for other people's feelings. This is something that we need to teach our children from a very young age, that they are not responsible to make everybody else happy, that they need to do things for them and for how they feel. And I think a lot of times we're not teaching that to our children, and it really impacts them mentally down the road. So this is just, it's 10 steps. It's 10 steps of what you need to really teach your children. And if they have those down, everything else is easier. And it's what I say in my practice all the time. And that's really why I wrote the book. So I wrote the book during COVID because COVID was a mental health disaster for these kids.
Yeah.
And I was, overly filled with patients. All my therapist friends were. We couldn't see enough people. People were really struggling. And I needed to give people a resource to try to start helping themselves. And I was saying, the same information over and over again in terms of habits and in terms of, what they need to focus on for them. So that's why I developed this book.
Wonderful. Working with children or the teenage, I think that's where when you say teenage, I don't know where that really starts.
It's hard to
we have a number associated, but where does this teenage mind really start? Where
it's bigger than you think. It really starts from the early tweens of like 10 and 11, and it goes later than you think. The brain is not fully developed until the early 20s. So it really does go through the 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So in every child is going to be a little bit differently how they're emotionally wired, how they're influenced, the things around them that are affecting them. You made some comments I always like, because in my background, what we do and what we teach in our modalities with our wellness center, that you mentioned something about hydration. You mentioned something about diet. You mentioned something about sleep. And I know, and and for a fact that, that these are really critical issues around health. And when we think about mental health, it goes beyond what we really understand what mental health is. And so you maybe just talk a little bit about hydration, sleep, and diet, where that really, in just understanding real some fundamental things about that. And then we'll get into your specifics about how you work with young people with your discipline.
Your body is designed, pretty well, and it could take on a lot of stress if you're treating it right. So if it's performing where it needs to be, it's able to respond to stress much better. It's able not to break down as easily. So that's why, your cells need to be hydrated, unless they're not going to be speaking to each other properly.
Yeah.
All your chemicals need to be properly made with the right food. You can't live off junk food and think that you're going to feel well. It's just not going to happen. And one of the other big elements that I forgot to mention earlier is exercise. You have to be moving your body. And these are things that when you normally walk into a mental health therapist's office are not necessarily being addressed. And many times, unfortunately, they're not even fully being addressed at a pediatrician's office. But without this, it's an uphill battle constantly for mental health. So if they're going to school well rested, well hydrated, having moved their body, eating real food, they are going to be able to function throughout their day so much better in terms of focus, in terms of not getting, angry, not having sugar highs and lows. And I don't think that as a society, we're really understanding that mental health is in our control. We need to be able to really fuel our bodies properly.
Yeah. And, that sort of brings just thought just came to me. A lot of people hear mental health and they associate with a stigma of some sort. And how do you address that? How do you get parents to feel comfortable about dealing with what we call mental health? And so that they can address it in a positive way, they feel comfortable, they're not worried about what people might think or say, or labels that they maybe put on their kids or put on themselves. How do you deal with the stigma of mental health? I think it's a good word. I think we need to make it a positive part of our health regimen versus something negative.
Yes, it really needs to be almost implemented, just as physical health, that, every year you get a yearly checkup. And if something is wrong, you address it, you go to a specialist, you fix it. The same with mental health. And I don't really always love the labels that come with mental health. I'm more, let's look at the symptoms. How is this impacting your daily base, you on a daily basis? So if your child is suffering from panic attacks, okay, let's fix the panic attacks. It's just as if they had a broken leg. Let's go fix the broken leg. This is all within our brain chemistry. It's within our bodies, and we need to be able to focus on that and not shy away from it. And I do think as a society, we have come a really long way in dropping the stigma with mental health. The other issue is that so many people deal with this. We think we're the only ones sometimes, but really, I mean, right now we're in a mental health crisis when it comes to children. Depression and anxiety is through the roof like I have never seen before.
That was one of the things I was going to bring up here is a transition into that, is that we hear about it in the media. I don't have children anymore, but I know families that have it, and there's some concerns there. And they sometimes they just feel hopeless. They don't know there's avenues or ways to go. So what's the real state of, you mentioned it's the worst you've seen, but what is really the state? What are some of the root causes? You mentioned some of it is our physiological ways that how to be mentally healthy, is it the body chemistry that we deal with. But what are some of the things you're seeing that parents need to know about? What might be causing things that they're not quite sure what's going on with their children?
If you look at how children are being raised and kind of behaving overall now opposed to years ago, there's a very big difference. Kids now are primarily in their bedrooms on electronics. There's a massive disconnect with the rest of the family, because even years ago, if the kids were sitting in front of the TV in the living room, you still have parents coming in and out. They're still, talking. They're not glued in. The electronics, they're very different what these, phones are producing and social media. So your child is basically living in some form of a fantasy world for most of their day. They're seeing things that just aren't real. They have friends that they've never even met in person at this point. They have relationships that they've never met in person. There's a massive disconnect. And the kids are feeling that because we're social creatures and we're supposed to be connected to each other. So for parents, start taking note. How often are you seeing your child in the house? Are you having family dinners together? Are you connecting, or are you kind of just roommates who, you drive them around every once in a while to go bring them someplace? And the other issue is that, these children are under a lot of pressure. They're expected to go to, these good name colleges, and everything is about building up the resume, and everything is almost about for the future, not about what is going on now. What do you enjoy doing now? Not what clubs are you in to build your college resume. So they're losing out on a lot of joy, and they're losing out on just enjoying life and having fun. And they're not getting refueled. They're just giving, and nothing is building them back up. COVID was actually, for some kids, wonderful because their schedules stopped. And at first they went, oh my goodness, what do I do with all my time? And we started talking about, what do you enjoy? And at first they had no idea. And then some kids were like, you know what? I want to try cooking. I want to try woodworking. I want to learn a language just because I want to learn that language, not because it's in school. And these kids came up with some really brilliant ideas, and they started getting excited, and they were being creative.
Yeah. And that I can see that. I'm going to date myself a little bit, but growing up in the 50s and 60s, we didn't have the devices.
Mhm.
Yeah, if we watch TV, it was family. Matter of fact, the neighbors came over and the kids, because TVs was an anomaly in the beginning. Not everybody had a TV, and not everybody had a color TV. So it was community, and we played outside. I mean, we were in the dirt, we were in the parks, we were in the creeks, we were in all our buddies and our friends, we were all doing the same thing. And I don't see that happening. Is that pretty much what's happening with kids
That's
today?
another issue, is that the kids are really more engaged in organized sports and organized activities, which on some level are fantastic. But the other issue is that there are adults running this. When you used to have kids biking around and going exploring in the forest, they would figure out their own problems. They would problem solve.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, right now, adults have really stepped in and they've been doing all the problem solving for these kids. And they don't have the coping skills to get through life. Anytime there's an issue, even in school, they're texting their parent. Oh my goodness, what do I do? My teacher just told me, I'm missing an assignment. And it's this instant response from the parents. Oh, do this. Say this. The kids are never having to figure it out on their own.
Wow. Yeah, I can now relate back. We would figure out how to get across the stream.
Yes.
We'd figure everything out, and we worked it out. So yeah, the ability to be critical thinking or creative thinking, I can see that with things I've studied as well, disappearing with a lot of adults as well. Controlled by these devices. But get back on the children. So, great points. Just so monitor your kids, what they're doing, how much time they're outside, what are they doing with these devices?
Yes.
And what do you recommend there? Is there any protocols you make a recommendation, or everybody's a little bit different? But is there a recommendation you make with some sort of protocol that would be healthy?
Everybody is a little bit different, but there is one rule that I really try to stick by, and I think everyone needs to stick by, including adults. There should be no phones in the bedroom overnight, ever. Because your kids who are getting texts in the middle of the night, nothing good is happening from these texts.
Right.
And it's stressing them out because it's normally one of their friends in crisis, or it's a relationship issue. Like, there's a problem if somebody is texting your child at 2 a.m.
Or
and
predators.
that's what's happening.
Or predators.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then their sleep is interrupted as well. There is no reason to have a phone in the bedroom overnight.
Yeah. And that also probably lead when you're really trying to build family relationship, that the devices are put away as well.
Yes, no devices at the dinner table ever.
Mom and dad included.
100%. And that's something important for parents to realize. Also take note about, if you're sitting on the living room couch and you have your phone in your hand, what are you showing to your child? We make it a point to try to have books in my living room and games in my living room. So if you're bored, go grab a book, go grab a game.
Yeah. We've got to be that example to change those behaviors that are, they're going to mimic us. It's not what we say that's important. They're going to do what they see.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's one thing, put your phone down, but mom and dad are still doing the phone thing.
Yes, and kids tell me this all the time. They're like, you're telling me not to be on my phone. My parents are playing solitaire on their phone for hours.
Let's play solitaire together on a board, right? Across the kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
That would, I can't comprehend that, not having children today in this environment. So big crisis, big problem. What are you seeing? We hear it about now that kids our suicide rates are up on children, girls, and if I'm not mistaken, girls more so than boys. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's a tragedy. These young people, I just can't comprehend that. So what are the signs of that I think parents should know about? What are the deep signs? Yeah, we need to be aware of all the other things, but when a child is in a crisis, what are some of the signs that a parent should know about?
Right. Anytime your child is drastically changing any type of behavior that they've normally done, that's something that needs to be examined. So if all of a sudden they're used to, hanging out with these 3 kids and now that's completely shifted that needs to be looked at, what's going on in their life. If they really enjoyed doing something before and now they're not doing it, that needs to be looked at. If they used to kind of talk to you and now they're hiding more, these are all signs that something is going on. But I tell parents, you need to be checking in consistently with your child. Consistently. Every night before they go to bed, sit down with them. How was your day? What happened during your day today? Who'd you hang out with? Who'd you speak to? And ask, because you don't want to just try to check in when there's a crisis happening, because of course you have to then, but it's going to be harder to get information if you already didn't establish this relationship. So every day, check in with your child. And the best time to sometimes talk to them is in the car when they can't escape. So, when you're driving somewhere, turn down the music and start talking.
Oh, that might be controversial. You just put your children in. But no, that makes a lot of sense that there's an opportunity there. It's called engagement. Really, not just check in, just not ask a question, but really engage, I think is get that dialogue going. Are kids reluctant to be open with their parents, or they
I think they want to be open. I think they start closing up when they feel attacked. So when parents are listening, they need to actively listen, not then try to solve the problem, not then ask 20 questions, which drive kids nuts. Just sit back and listen. That's one of the most important things. And then you can always ask, like, do you want advice on how to handle this? Like, do you want to hear what I would do? And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say no, and that's okay, because they can figure out their own problems. But sometimes they just need to talk about it and talk it through.
Yeah. And that sort of leads to another question I have. You're getting a sense what's going, there's a problem. I mean, we can't, so many times parents can't really put their finger on. How do you make that communication with the parent to say, let's go talk to somebody like yourself? How do you make that as a positive versus a negative? What would a parent say? And who should they seek out? I guess that'd be the first thing. What should parents be looking at for a practitioner that could help a child? Is, many times we just look in the phone book, or maybe the school counselor, or resources, the church, or whatever it is. But what should a parent be really looking for when they need somebody to help come in and intervene and come together and work collaboratively to work with these young people? What should they be looking for as a professional?
Right. I mean, you obviously want to look for somebody who's licensed in your state. That way, they're right there for you. But one of the most important things to look for is you have to have a good rapport with them. And more importantly, your child has to have a good rapport with them. Study after study shows it doesn't really matter what type of therapy they're practicing. I have many certifications and many different forms of therapy. It doesn't matter. What matters is the relationship. So if sometimes, it's not the first try, you go to a therapist and it doesn't click, go to another therapist, and, don't give up after one, because it's really just about finding somebody that they're comfortable talking to. And, you talked, before about, well, how do you kind of approach that with your child? I think a lot of it is, telling your child you're going to gain coping skills. You're going to be able to gain skills for life that unfortunately a lot of adults never got. So you're ahead of the game. It's like, if you're struggling in math, you're going to get a tutor to get those skills. Life is tough and we need skills.
Wonderful. Great advice. Many times people, when they take their children to the doctor and they bring these issues up, and of course they have a modality, they have a way they want to approach that. So a doctor is going to take one approach, and that may be something that is in the area maybe of medications or pharmaceuticals. And I believe there's probably a place for that. Mm-hmm. Or psychiatrist is different than I'm going to guess what is a holistic psychotherapist, because there's two different modalities, two different ways of looking at a situation. And I'm not discounting that. It maybe should be looked at. And is it somebody like yourself really work collaboratively with say, a medical practitioner or a psychiatrist, which is a different category? Do you work collaboratively with that environment?
I do. Some of my clients do use medication, and every situation is very unique. I come from the mindset of let's try everything else first. Uh,
Okay.
then if we need to go the medication route, let's absolutely go there. And I always have contact with the psychiatrist. That way we're on the same page.
Wonderful. I think that's important that there's two different modalities, two different
Mhm.
ways to look at the same issue, same problem, and collaboratively they may be necessary. But I thank you for that advice. So my next question for clarity is: we hear holistic all the time. A lot of times, whether it be in the traditional health arena, now we're talking in the mental health, the psycho. What is a holistic psychotherapist? What does that really mean? For clarity.
Sure. It's more than just the symptoms. It's more than just the diagnosis. It's, everything else that's combined in that person's life. So it's what their daily habits look like. It's what's their screen time. It's what they do for joy. It's how they're eating. It's how much water they're drinking. Are you exercising? All of that gets pulled into play. So it's really the whole picture of the person, not just what they're coming into my office with saying, I have anxiety. This is why, and this is why. It's okay. And what else is happening in your life? What else could be possibly contributing to this? Because it's all connected.
Holistic is so everything in their environment, in their world,
Yes.
like you said, from the hydration, nutrition, exercise, the environment, the people they hang with, what's going on at school, all those things. Okay. Holistic, everything comes
Everything.
together.
Mhm.
Everything. You have a sphere, right?
Yes.
Not a circle. I could call that a sphere. What's that sphere that you're in?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we talked a little bit. What does integrated solution focus mean? When you say integrated, what are you looking to integrate? In
I'm looking to really integrate tools that work for that person. So what's working in their life that they can take out of my office and implement on a daily basis. And every kid is very different with that. And every kid's very different with what works for them. So you need to find what you could weave into their lives and something that is very solution focused. Kids are a little bit black and white thinkers. So to have a toolbox to, go through your day with is very helpful for them.
okay, yeah. So you're bringing a lot of clarity for myself, and I just want to make sure that those that are watching this is that you tag and share this out with your friends, your family, your colleagues, and more importantly, if you see somebody that you know that's having issues, make sure they get this information to start that evaluate, start the process of how can I help versus solve, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you made that many times. Parents want to solve the problem. How can we help and guide? Because many times the children can figure it out themselves too if they're giving the right direction, right?
Yeah, they just need the knowledge and the tools, and many times they could do it.
Okay. So those are the questions I have. In this area, we went back, we're in a crisis, I believe, in a very significant way. Um, Got to be aware of the signs of a child in distress, mental distress.
Mhm. But before
Um,
we even get to that point of being aware, parents have to start making sure that they're connecting and engaging. Parenting is hard. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of work. And it's not just about signing your child up for activities and giving them tutors and making sure their grades are good. You have to be able to connect with them.
and I think that really is a proactive approach. Is that if the parents out there they haven't got teenage children or in that area, start doing those things today to make sure that they're hydrated, nutrition. You start monitoring, you start engaging with your children, and those things work proactively versus reactively.
Yes.
Yeah, because right now we're addressing that child that may be 10 to the teens or early 20s. Um, Start working proactively. I would
Mhm.
think if you got or plan on having children, I can.
Absolutely. It
As
starts
a
from a very
parent,
young age.
yeah,
Very young age, you're kind of laying that groundwork. And one of the chapters in the book is about allowing your child to be disappointed. And that starts very early on. If a play date cancels, You don't need to then go bring them for ice cream. You could just let them know that a play date canceled and that you'll make it up later. So I think it's, it starts early.
Yeah. Yeah. And in our conversation where we started the interview here today, you mentioned some you work in young adults where our brains form and are able to comprehend and work more efficiently as we age because they're still a developing organ. We're not born with all our functions necessary in all our parts of our body, but our brain. So you said working with young people that are maybe going to college and that type of thing. What are the stresses they're having? They're home, away from home now. They're in that same cycle of a circle or a sphere of other people having maybe the same pressures and issues. What are young adults like that experiencing pressure wise, stress wise, that they should be aware of, or their parents should be aware of? Because many times we may have a college kid looking at this and they're feeling that. What are the things that they should be aware of?
I think one of the things to be aware of is that many times our college kids are completely prepared academically. That's not normally the issue. The bigger issue is they've gone their whole life not being able to really effectively problem solve, not being able to learn to connect with others, and not gain the confidence that they can do all of this. That's really the biggest issue I see in college, is that they don't have confidence in themselves to live independently because, parents, well-meaning as they were, did everything for them. And, when I get a senior in high school, especially in my office, and I say, "You're doing your own laundry, right?" And they're like, "What do you mean? I don't know how to do laundry." And then the parents say, "Oh no, they're so busy. I have to do it for them." We're just setting them up for failure later on. These kids need to be able to engage in daily life skills. They need to have responsibility.
Wow. I was growing up. I praised my parents that my mom taught me how to cook and sew a button on my shirt, how to iron clothes, how to do the laundry. I see, I'm not doing a comparison, but when I was 18, I was prepared to go into the world on my own.
Right. They are not.
They're not.
They're not.
So teach your children the reality of life, right? We got to know how to cook, know how, my father taught me how to change the oil in my car, things that were necessary in the day. But
right.
I see that I see other families. I look at, can't boil water.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what happens when the real world shows up.
Yeah.
Right.
And think of how that impacts their confidence. If they're going off to school or college knowing that they don't know how to do laundry, that they can't boil water, that they don't know how to, look at their schedule and figure out what's missing, from a class because the parents were constantly on their high school portals telling them, "Oh, you're missing an assignment in Spanish class, go make it up." They don't have those skills. So we as parents need to be able to watch our children struggle a little bit and not solve everything for them.
Yeah, the great advice. We're sort of getting down here to the whole thing is your book is outlining these principles that we're talking about, I'm sure, in great detail.
Yes.
How can people get your book, Keri?
Sure. Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Parent Needs to Know is available on Amazon, both paperback and ebook. So you can go over there to get a copy.
Okay. And through your website, is there a link to order the book there, or?
There isn't yet. That is being worked on currently.
Okay,
so I would just go right to Amazon.
Yeah, I should have gotten that Amazon information so we have on the banner, but you can always reach out to Keri.
Yes.
So the book's in publication now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And now you work one-on-one with the young adults, and you collaborate with the parents as well. So
often, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And those that you're in what part of the eastern part of the United States? So those that are in your geographic area that would like to reach out to you, where are you located?
I am in Bergen County, New Jersey.
Okay. All right. So we want to make that, and all that information's on your website. And what I like to do is just sort of recap here parting words that, wisdom or a thought or something that somebody can say, I understand I need to be involved with my children. What would you say?
So at the end of my book, actually, I talk about this and I say, something that was really powerful that I heard as a parent was that you only have 18 summers with them. And I went, oh, wow. Like they're going to be off to college at some point and they're not going to be here and they're going to become adults and live on their own. So it's, 18 years that you really have them for. I mean, you have them forever, but it's 18 years of really intense work.
Yeah. Wow. I appreciate what we've been talking about today. Having somebody out there that is bringing this message out is so uplifting. It's so hopeful that there is a solution. That mental health is not a stigma. That children are in a different environment than I was brought up. That's for sure. And even yourself, being a younger adult than myself, you've seen those changes. And you said you knew in high school that you wanted to work in this population. But I didn't ask this question, and was wanting to work in this population because you were facing those challenges yourself, or you just something in your heart space that showed up that you wanted to work with, or did you have anything specific?
I think it was both. I saw a lot of friends that struggled, and I was the one that they talked to. And also, I did not really love high school, especially the academic piece of it. I'm not that type of person who could take an information and just spit it back out. So, high school was tough.
Okay. So you struggled with, just dealing with how you were dealing with that. And your friends recognize you were a good sounding board, a good ear,
Yes.
able to listen. I think that's the key. And I think that's so important in human behavior, of whatever is being a parent. My wife is great at this. And she says, we have this need. Do you see me? Do you hear me? And can you demonstrate you care? And I think, the parents today really got, do you really hear them? Are you really seeing them? And do you really care? Because that's a area that many people are not in tune with, because that's part of how we engage at a different level. So I really appreciate what I'm hearing from you. I haven't read your book, but I'm going to definitely get it myself. So I'll make sure I get that ordered. And I just want to make sure people get this information out. And it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on Own Your Own Health. And
thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Great. I'm going to put you in my back room, my green room, and enjoy those M&Ms that you was part of our agreement. And just hold tight, and we'll be back with you. But I'm going to roll this on out here today. Keri, is an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Own Your Own Health. That's what it's about, is just bringing a new level of awareness in the areas of concern in health in all areas, and mental health, especially with our young people. How we deal with it early is going to determine how they become adults, functioning adults. And there's a crisis like she shared, and how we as the audience watching this, as parents, being aware of how we can work proactively in that environment. And so I encourage everybody to get the book. All the information is scrolling across the bottom here. So Own Your Own Health is the platform here. So I thank everybody for watching. Tag and share with your audience and your friends. Let's make a difference. This message today, if we can help one person, we live a life of service. So share this out.